Hello, this is Weird Al Yankovic, and you're watching Consequence.
Hi, everybody. This is Ben K with Consequence, and I'm here with one of my favorite artists of all time, the great Weird Al Yankovic. How we doing, Al?
Hey, Ben, how's it going?
It's excellent. So actually, yeah, like I just said, I just caught you at Carnegie Hall during the ridiculously ill-advised, self-indulgent Vanity Tour, which is a fun mouthful. How was playing such a legendary venue with the wackiest music possible?
It was a bit surrealistic. It was something that I'd been looking forward to and being nervous about for a very long time. I mean, because, Carnegie Hall's, one of the most prestigious, venues in the world. And I've been hearing about it ever since I was watching, Bugs Bunny cartoons as a small child. I mean, it's like Carnegie Hall was like the place to play. And so, even though it was a 6-month tour, every show that I did leading up to Carnegie Hall, I was like getting nervous. I was like, oh, I'm going to be playing the song at Carnegie Hall. And I don't normally get nervous, and particularly not on this tour, because this is a very low key, low stress tour. But I was a little freaked out because, walking into Carnegie Hall and you see the huge pictures of, Judy Garland and Frank Sinatra and the Beatles and, all these conductors, and you're like, what am I doing here? This isn't right.
Well, I mean, I had an absolute blast. That was maybe the 6th or 7th time I've seen you. First time I've seen the Self-Indulgent Tour, and it was phenomenal. But I mean, of course, the big news in Weird World is Weird, the Al Yankovic Story. I just saw it. It's ridiculous. It's fantastic. It is utterly amusing. It's exactly what I remember when the trailer dropped. People were like super confused about A, Daniel Radcliffe, and B, like, what is this movie? It's like, what is happening? I'm like, guys, he's Weird Al. It's a parody. Like, it's not a real biopic.
Well, we wanted to confuse people because, I mean, that was sort of the intention, was to have them guessing all the way up until they actually see the movie. Because, I kind of wish we weren't doing all the publicity for it, because we had to give away, some secrets and kind of the gist of the concept. But because I wanted people to watch the movie thinking maybe for the first half an hour, maybe this happened, maybe this is true. And then, like, oh, obviously this is not true.
But I mean, there's nuggets of truth.
Right.
The kind of most obscure one to me would be that you actually did get into accordion from a door-to-door accordion salesman, which, like, why did that exist? and like, yeah.
I can't tell you why it existed. I mean, this would have been like 1966. So apparently at that point in the country's history, it was still acceptable or okay for like door-to-door salesmen to come around and offer their services. It seems that went away pretty quickly afterwards. But yeah, I mean, it was a real thing. I mean, in fact, Judy Tenuta, same thing. I just found this out. Like, same thing. She took accordion lessons based on like a door-to-door salesman coming around. Wow. So I guess that was an actual thing that was going on at the time.
I guess that explains how accordion musicians get into the accordion, because how else would you do it unless it just showed up in front of your door one day?
Right. Unless people forced you to do it.
Right. But
it wouldn't occur to you otherwise.
So Daniel Radcliffe, when I remember when the casting was announced, as a fan, I was like, this makes no sense. Of course, like, realizing what the film is, I'm like, okay, I get it now. But I know he was your first choice. Why is Daniel Radcliffe your first choice for the parody version of Weird Al?
I just really felt, and again, this sounds very California, but he had the right energy for it. I felt that we were kind of kindred spirits. Because I knew that he was a big fan of Tom Lehrer, and Tom Lehrer is one of my heroes. And the fact that he performed the Tom Lehrer song on British national television next to Rihanna and Colin Farrell, I mean, that's an alpha nerd thing to do. And I thought, okay, all right, I'd get along with this guy. So I mean, and that was kind of that wasn't why he was cast, but that kind of put him on my radar.
Mhm.
And then when we were trying to figure out who to do this movie with, I just had become a huge fan. I mean, I loved the Harry Potter series, but I was particularly a fan of the choices that he made post Potter. And
Right.
he's done a lot of, for want of a better word, weird movies and very interesting and strange roles. And I knew that this would not throw him. He would
Right.
like launch headfirst into playing this odd version of me.
Mhm.
And first and foremost, I just think he's a phenomenal actor. He's great at comedic roles and he's great at dramatic roles. He's done some, man, I don't know if you've seen some of his material in the last few years, but he's really gone to some dark places and done some really intense things. And we wanted somebody who knew what comedy was and could play the comedy, but first and foremost, who could play this ridiculous material very seriously. We wanted to be very grounded and very serious the whole way through.
And I do think that's kind of how you creatively and like maybe even like mentally just survive having been Harry Potter. It's just like, I'm gonna go do crazy cool stuff that like nobody's gonna expect of me and that I want to do. And I think, yeah, it probably helped him just as a person.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very conscious decision on his part, I think, to get as far away from Harry Potter as he can. And I understand that. In fact, when we were doing the performance of Amish Paradise, he was a little reluctant to wear the Amish glasses because they looked to him a little like Harry
Really?
Potter glasses. And we're like, no, man, that's kind of like the thing. That's what I'm wearing in the video. You gotta wear those.
Right. No, you got to look like me in this instance. And that was, I mean, did you, I know it was a really quick shoot. It was only like what, 18 days or something
18
like that.
days, yeah.
Did you spend a lot of time on set because you're in the movie, but in a sort of smaller secondary role?
I, I was I was on set every single day.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I mean, and I only shot, I think, mostly. I think I was on being shot the second day, but I co-wrote the movie. I'm one of the producers on the movie. It's a movie about me, ostensibly. So I wanted to make sure that I was available. I wanted to be there in case I was needed for a quick rewrite, or if Daniel needed me to show him like fingering on the accordion, or just whatever. I mean, because if I'm not around, then I'm not really that useful. And if I have notes in the editing room, that's not as easy to fix as if I had notes like literally as we're shooting.
I mean, even in that short time span, you crammed in some of like the craziest cameos of like the last like decade of film. um, One of my questions is like, what came first, the person doing the cameo or the person that they played? Like, when you knew you could get like Conan O'Brien, spoiler, did you say like, we know exactly who you're going to play, or is like, hey Conan, do you want to play? I'm going to keep this under wraps so
Yeah,
in
yeah,
case listeners haven't seen it, but like,
yeah.
which
Well,
came first?
the script was written first,
Right.
and so we knew the characters in the script, and then it was a matter of me going through my address book and saying, "Oh, I wonder if this person would play this person," kind of thing. So
Yeah.
like a mix and match, like you have column A and column B, and then you just draw lines between them.
Right. I mean, personally, my favorite was Emo Phillips, just
Oh
because
yeah,
he's such a character in his comedy performance that like to see him play a character was like, it was like triple levels in my brain.
yeah.
It was really cool.
Yeah, and
Um,
he took that very, very seriously. I mean, it basically one line in the
yeah,
movie, but he spent, I think, months trying to perfect his Catalonian accent, and it was so good that we had to subtitle him because it was almost indecipherable.
yeah, he would though, right? Like he
Yeah,
would
he
go
would.
that hard into one
Right.
line. I'm going to spoil one other cameo because it's
Sure.
interesting how this happened, or I think it might be. The Patton Oswalt has a very side character part in this thing, but then I went back and watched the Funny or Die trailer from like whatever, it's like 10 years ago,
Right.
and he's Dr. Demento.
Yes.
So why is Rainn Wilson Dr. Demento in the final product?
I will tell you the story of this. Rain prefers that I not bring this up too often, but since you asked specifically, I will tell you that the original plan was to have Patton Oswalt play Dr. Demento, reprising his role from the original Funny or Die video. And that was the plan up until about a week before we started shooting, at which point he broke his foot in three places.
No.
And for several days we were in denial, like, oh, we could have Dr. Meno on crutches or
Mhm.
in a wheelchair, or and Pat was like, no, the whole actor thing, like, no, I can do this, I can do this, I can make it happen. And then about 3 days before we were going to shoot him, we finally kind of came to our senses and said, we have to think of a plan B, because, like, Dr. Meno's got to be able to walk
Right.
on two legs. So at that point, I contacted Rainn Wilson, who was an old friend of mine, and thank goodness he happened to be available, and obviously knocked that out of the park.
Right.
Now, I will go further and say that um, uh, Aaron Paul, who played me in the original
Right.
video, was going to do a small cameo as a heckler in the biker bar, and he showed up on set and tested positive for COVID.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he was our only COVID casualty, but it was a bummer because we were shooting so fast that we couldn't, like, reschedule it or have him come back later. So he basically had to go home, and he was like sick as a dog for like 10
Oh,
days, and he
that's a
felt terrible.
bummer.
So what happened was, after he fell out, we're like, well, Patton, you could be the heckler, because we can set you on a stool in the
Yeah.
bar. You don't have to move, and
Just stand
you
there.
can still be in the movie.
That's so funny. Wow. Okay, that's kind of amazing how that worked out.
Yeah,
Bummer
the
for
musical
both.
chairs. Yeah,
Yeah, bummer for both at like the end of the day, but like at least it kind of worked out.
yeah.
So I do want to ask you a little bit about something else you did for the film, which was actually re-record some of your classics for the soundtrack. My specific interest is things like My Bologna and Another One Rides the Bus, because those, like, My Bologna was, as it is in the movie, recorded in a bathroom. And if I'm right, Another One Ride the Bus had never been recorded in a studio.
That's true. That's correct. Yeah.
It was recorded. The version that people know was a live taping from Dr. Demento.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So what was it like getting the chance to actually take those in studio and give them another go?
It was odd, in particular, Another One Rides the Bus, because, like you said, that had never been, like, recorded in an actual studio environment before. And I was recording a song that I had done, 42 years ago. I mean, a long time ago. And my voice sounded a whole lot different back then. I'd like to think I've gotten up to be a better singer over the years. So I had to kind of channel my early 80s self and try to, like, figure out how I was singing back then, like a little bit more rougher, a little bit more coarse. So we made sure not to make it sound too good,
Right.
because it had to sound like the original recording.
Right. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, because, like, you have such specific intonations when you sing certain songs. I don't know if you hear it or if you notice it, but, like, as somebody who sings your songs all the time, like, when I'm just listening to them myself, there are certain, like, hits, the ways you say things, like in Another One Rides the Bus, like the end of every line.
Uh-huh.
When you went back and re-recorded it, were you trying to recreate those things very specifically? I guess more broadly, I'm asking, did you try to create it exactly as it had originally been done, or give it a little bit of an update because, hey, now you're in a studio?
Well, in terms of the vocal performance and the accordion performance, I try to make it sound as much like the original as I possibly could. And of course, it's not going to sound exactly like it. And that's part of the point, because, one of the big reasons we did all these new versions and these re-recordings was because they're supposed to be live performances, and they're not supposed to sound like the studio version.
Right.
Because we needed the stems for mixing to make it sound like whatever environment they're in, a biker bar or outdoor party or whatever. So that's why we did it. And for Another One Rides the Bus, some of the toys and the little noisemakers and sound effects are a little different than the original recording, because we were trying to match picture. And for My Bologna, I got to, when I did the original bathroom recording, I thought it was too slow, and when we did the album version, I thought it was too fast. So this new version is exactly right in the middle. It's just the right speed.
So also on the soundtrack, you do have a new original song, Now You Know, which I think I first heard it in the, like, actually listening to the credit scene.
Yeah.
And it's hysterical. And my girlfriend next to me died at every fake break, completely died. First of all, is that song actually up? Like, can it actually be nominated for an Oscar?
Well,
Because Yeah.
I was twisting Roku's arm. They do not want to make it eligible for an Oscar because if you make the movie Oscar eligible, that means they can't submit it for the Emmys, and they would rather have it when Emmys because, in their words, they're a TV company, not a movie company. So honestly, I don't agree with their logic, but I accept it and I respect it, and let's win some Emmys.
I mean, I think I might be on the Oscar roll, so I'll bump them. I'll use it as a write-in. I can just
Okay,
like yeah.
thank you.
All right. Well, Weird Al, it's been an honor, honestly. I dressed up for the occasion. You're a longtime hero of mine, so thank you so much for
Oh,
taking the
this is a
time.
pleasure, man. We'll get to those
Appreciate
three
it.
other pages some other time.
Yeah, we'll hit it.
All right.